Glee, your videographer from Two Hats Publishing. Welcome to the College of Complexes, being held at Barbeck's Restaurant at 8949 Garland Road, Dallas, Texas. Gently embracing the east side of White Rock Lake. When I entered, I was greeted like coming home to Grandma's house, warm and friendly. When visiting the Barbeck's Restaurant, tell them you want your reservations for the next College Complex class.
Let me know when you're ready. He's ready. Okay, welcome to the College of Complexes. I have to start over for the videographer here. Anyway, we started a little late because of technical difficulties here, but anyway, we're going to be underway now. Before we put on our speaker, are there any announcements? Now's the time for announcements. Any announcements? No announcements. Susie usually has an announcement, but no announcement. I'm so happy, no announcements. Okay, that's good. I won't know announcements. Anyway, then we put a speaker on every week, a different subject. We give our speaker up to an hour to make a presentation. If anybody interrupts the speaker, we remind the interrupter we want to listen to one fool at a time. That's one of our rules. And then, what?
Announcement about the Labor Day picnic.
Well, who wants to make it? Well, you come on up here and make the announcement.
It's fun, it's free, it's fun.
You want to come up here? Come on up here. I'm just the MC, I'm not the announcer.
The Czech Hall is on Military Parkway, south of town. I forget how it's central south. Anyway, look it up. The Czech Hall, C-Z-E-C-H. Huge hall. They provide the chicken and I think the drinks, and you bring some kind of a side dish or such, or dessert. And there's tons of food, but you want to get there early for two reasons. First of all, the best food, it just keeps coming and coming at the beginning. So you want to get there for the food and get some of that out of the way. You want to have time to go up and down and talk to people at the different booths, which could be representing the different clubs, it could be representing anything, and sometimes things are for sale, t-shirts and all that. You also have the candidates, and this is a big midterm election and a big year because of the Wendy Davis. So we definitely want to listen to the speakers too. So it's your last chance to kind of really, if you're not in a club, one of these clubs, to really see all the candidates one at a time and go, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, okay. And you meet a lot of people. It's a lot of fun. It's just one big indoor picnic. Oh, okay. It's on Labor Day, and it's usually 12 p.m. to 4. 12 p.m. to 4. Plenty of parking, and people are inside, outside, but mostly inside because it's usually very cold. I mean, hot, of course. But it's nice and cool inside. It's just a friendly day, and it's one of the biggest things of the year for the Democratic Party. So wear some buttons, wear red, white, and blue, you know, wear a hat. What color shoes? Anyway, picnic. You know, Democrats have more fun.
Any other announcements? Now's the time. All right.
Now's the time for her.
Yeah, I know that. We're overdue. All right. Anyway, as I said before, we put a speaker on. We give an hour to make a presentation. If they go over an hour, we cut them off. If anybody interrupts the speaker, remind the interrupter we want to listen to one fool at a time. Then we have questions and answers, not speeches. And then we have remarks, rebuttals. Everyone in this audience that wants to gets 5 minutes at this podium to respond to the speaker said for or against. And our speaker gets the last word, gets a comment and close the meeting. That's how it works. So anyway, our speaker tonight is Katherine Savers McGovern, excuse me. And she's a retired assistant United States attorney, Dallas, recent Democratic nominee to U.S. Congress, District 32. She ran against Pete Sessions last time, with current practice in McGovern Law Office since April 2011. She'll discuss the reaction of certain Americans to the plight of unaccompanied Central American minors who have surged across the United States border in Texas. In her view, the intense hate-filled anti-immigrant demonstrations aimed at the children, buses, have been morally unacceptable because of the safety threat to and harmful impact on these minors. under America's existing immigration laws. Okay, we'll cut all that out. And anyway, but thank you. It's anyway. Without further ado, there's, as you know, the immigration didn't come to Dallas because they cut it off. So she's going to talk anyway. Let's put Katherine on.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Tom. You all, we had a computer crash and we lost everything. Fortunately, we have a gentleman that knows what he's doing and we were able to recover. So I'm going to start out with the first thing.
Do you want to do the lights?
Yeah, you could dim the lights. That would work.
Turn out the sun.
Turn off the lights.
What's the wires?
All right. We're just having trouble with that, with our computer system, and I'm going to give it up because I've obviously caused some genie to come into that system and stop working whenever I touch it. The reason that I started out with those photographs and pictures, courtesy of NBC and the Dallas Morning News, and Bon Jovi's song, is that I wanted to illustrate what those children who were inside the bus were seeing, and how if you were 10, 12 years old, and you had a crowd of people you didn't know who were grown up but yelling at you and having signs that although you might not be able to read the English, you can probably figure out that it's a harsh, unwelcoming thing. Those children were in those buses at a time that they were in the custody of the United States of America. Under our immigration laws, when they come across the border, whether they should or they should not, they are taken into custody and they are what's called processed under the Immigration Act. Whether or not they have a right to stay or do not have a right to stay, one thing is absolutely clear. We as a country have taken on their safety and welfare. And so when we as a country allow adults to block and surround buses full of little children who for the most part are unaccompanied, we have failed. The police have failed. And I believe that we need to reflect on what we were talking about. Now this is not, those of us that are seniors recognize that we have seen harsh actions before with respect to young people. All of us, well, not all of us, but many of us can remember what happened in Little Rock when the kids were trying to go, or James Meredith going into the University of Mississippi or Alabama. Anyway, yeah. But it's been a while. When doing the research, it seemed to me that the last time we had refugees coming in that perhaps were not as welcome were the Haitians that came in back when Bill Clinton was president. But we are a nation of laws, and we have set up a way to deal with people who come into our country. And it does not include allowing adults to get around and heckle young people's children. If you think about it, in fact, there was an instance when some man who was running for Congress was trying to make a name for himself as being anti-immigration, so he was out there in Marietta, and he saw this school bus coming along, a yellow school bus, and he just assumed that it must be some of the immigrants. I guess he thought that they were trying to sneak them in under color of yellow school bus. Anyway, he goes roaring up and he's getting ready to yell at them and everything when his aide starts saying, you know, those are American children you're yelling at. And he has to back off. But think about it. The reason that he stopped was because he thought they were American children as compared to children. Now, I have a PowerPoint, but I'm somewhat leery of trying to get it to show, which is why I haven't gone to it. Now, let me give you a little bit of background about what has been done by different groups to take a look at what caused these children to come across the border. And to be honest with you, once a child comes across the border, he or she is protected as an unaccompanied minor, and there are special laws that apply. But the U.S. Council of Catholic Bishops had sent an envoy down to Honduras, El Salvador, and Nicaragua to take a look at what were the conditions that were causing a surge. This occurred back in November of 2013, long before the surge that has taken us so much this summer and gotten so much press. But the one thing, the most important thing that came out of this report, and if any of you all want it, you can send me an email and I'll email it to you, but is the violence in the countries that are the Central American countries. For reasons that deal with the weakness of the governments in those countries, you basically have gangs who are running through there in various criminal activities. Among the activities that put these children and actually the whole families at risk is the effort to do one of two things. For a young boy, 8, 10, really young and into their early teens, the gangs try to force them to either join the gang and become a criminal. They may be a watcher, they may be taking drug shipments here and there, or any other things that the cartels are doing, which is wrong. Or they may themselves get abducted and sold into sex trafficking or human trafficking, as we call it. Dallas-Fort Worth is one of the epicenters for human and sex trafficking in the United States. So if you all think that are we talking about other communities that have sex? I was focused on Dallas-Fort Worth, to be honest with you. Houston, El Paso. For the girls, it's a predictable experience. They are at risk of being made to come into the gangs and to service the gang members, for sex. Or they may be sold into, the sex trafficking and brought into the United States, because that's where a lot of them get brought, although there are stories that they're getting sent to the Middle East and to China. Long and short of it, for a young person who is coming into their teens or the teens, their likelihood of getting shot, whether they're a girl or a boy, is substantial. So what the bishops' conference found, what their task force found, is that dangerous and risky as the trip is from any of the Central American countries to the United States on the hope of getting to be across the border, it is less risky and less of a risk of them getting killed than staying in their own countries. So the criticisms that have been heard about these kids, going, they should stay home. For many of the kids, if they stay home, they are likely and probably going to end up dead. They'll either end up dead because they get involved in the gangs and get killed in one of the gang skirmishes, or they'll be killed because they did not join the gang. That's no kind of choice. And so when you think, why would these kids ride on that the train? What is it, the Brute? The train that runs through Mexico, where so many kids are seen pictured on the top. Why would they do that, or why would their parents put them into the hands of a coyote or other person that represents that they can get them safely to the United States? It's a Hopkins choice for these kids. Now, when they come into the United States, though, we have allowed, our police and law enforcement and government have allowed actions to be taken against these kids through these protests, which the people who participate in them say are First Amendment protests. We have the rule of law which protects children from abuse, whether it is verbal or physical. So when you surround a bunch of kids who are in the custody of the United States, who are in buses, and you will not let the bus move, you yell and scream for hours on end, because these were not like 15-minute situations, then the children are impacted. If I were representing one of the children, one of the claims that I would seek to make is a claim for traumatic brain injury, because of the extraordinary risk that these kids were put in by the failure of the government to move the people out of the way and let the kids get to the safety of the processing center that they were supposed to go to. In Marietta, which had gone on for several days, 6 people ended up being arrested. But they were not arrested because of any action they took against the children. They were arrested because 2 of the women were arguing with each other, and the other 4 people that were part of the group came in, and then a policeman came over and told them to stop it, and they would not stop it and started, mouthing off at the policeman, which produced the result that you would expect. They all get arrested. But it is not enough for people to only have to move if they fight with each other versus do the affirmative action they took against these children. Recently, when we thought that we were going to have the children coming here to Dallas, there was a large group of the anti-immigrants that were out protesting around the 6th Floor Museum and the Dallas County Commissioner's Court building. at Record and Elm. Some of us were down there. I happened to come a bit later, and so I chose to just stand on the corner with a sign that says love and protect children, and not engage with any of the protesters on the anti-immigration protesters. But I, of course, heard what they were saying, and so I kept hearing them saying, well, you know, when the buses come, we're going to have to do something, and we'll get and stop them from coming. And then pretty soon it was time for another demonstration, so two large Greyhound type buses pulled up and loaded on a good 2/3 of those protesters to take them out to Arlington. You may remember there were some protests out in Arlington. So what you have is a situation where people have been empowered to believe that they can interfere with the children in the custody of the Customs and Border Patrol being lawfully processed and transported different places to be processed. We don't know when the next event is going to happen, but one of the things that I would submit is that we have an obligation to those children and to our own children and our grandchildren to see that children are protected, minors are protected from the sort of abuse that occurred when we watched that action in Marietta. This is not an issue of whether or not you agree or do not agree with the current immigration laws. It has to do with whether or not it is lawful in the United States to abuse children, even if they are not from this country. I submit it's not. If you look at the laws that deal with child abuse and deal with the protection of children, they do not say these laws only apply if the child is a lawful immigrant or a citizen of the United States. It is that you may not abuse a child, and so I believe that we need to let our public officials know that it is not acceptable in Dallas County or in the city of Dallas for anyone to surround buses or other vehicles that have children in them and try to affect a governmental policy by stopping those buses. So I thank you, and I'm sorry that we had mechanical failures, but if you have any questions well, Tom's in charge, so he'll tell me what I do next.
Questions? You have any questions, anyone? Yes, I have one. Catherine, we know that this law was signed in 2008, do we not?
We know, yeah, you mean the one that was dealing with sex trafficking and...
Exactly. This is the law that right now, that if I'm correct, tell me if I'm correct, that if any country that's bordering the United States, the contingent lower 48, whether it be Canada or Mexico, is not bothered by that. But what it is the Central American countries, when they come through Mexico, that law protects them. Is it correct or not?
It gives them the opportunity to be processed with, and to have their claim, if they have one, for asylum or a special juvenile status or refugee status considered. But as I think a lot of you all know, we simply, the immigration courts are significantly underfunded, and so there are not enough judges, more or less attorneys, who would represent the interest of those children available. So on the one hand, the law gives you a right, On the other hand, if you do not have someone who is able to protect you by having met with you and learned what your claim is or what the basis might be for your claim and expressing it to the court, then you may not get to stay very long. But the other side of it is because the immigration courts are so underfunded and therefore they don't have enough judges, you may still end up being there a long time.
Thank you.
I was just wondering if the people of Murrieta, California have the freedom to keep and prevent the federal government from forcing illegals to take up residence in their town.
Well, one of the things that should be remembered is that the location that the children were going to be processed was under federal contract or federal property. So it is not accurate to say that the implication of your question is that could the children just be dropped off and left in Murrieta. Once they have been processed, they are generally, if they're going to be able to stay in the United States, sent to the family or the foster family, whatever, or else they're sent back to be returned to their home. But fundamentally, there's no city in the United States of America that can say to other people, you can't come here. We've already solved that through the Civil Rights Act. So Murrieta doesn't have the right to tell another citizen or guest in the United States, you're not welcome as long as they are law-abiding, and if they're not committing a felony or something like that, they should be able to stay.
Well, I doubt that. What we notice from this is that the people of Murrieta did not want illegals there.
First of all, let me interrupt you just a minute. When you say illegals, the only one who can determine if a person has status or not is the administrative judge. So they are not accurately called illegals. They are undocumented. The question of their status is unknown.
The people of Murrieta did not want them there, and they succeeded in preventing the federal government from forcing those people from staying there. They were one of the cities that stood up for their own rights as a city and as a people, that they had freedom to say the federal government is not going to deposit these illegals or undocumented, whatever soft words we want to talk about, in their town.
Well, one of the things is this, that I believe that your assumption that they had a right that was recognized is false, but I do believe that the United States, having the custody of the children, was looking to the best interest of the children. So you look at it, would it be in the best interest of the children to have them housed in an area where you would have people, adults, without restraint and no sensitivity at all as to what they were dealing with, willing to abuse children? I believe that the United States, through the Department of Homeland Security, made the correct decision, because the issue was not what does Murrieta want. The decision is what is in the best interest of the children.
This may be just too stupid a question, but I get so confused trying to figure out who is responsible. Like, I'm assuming federal troops or federal people are supposed to protect these children, and where were they on our border? What's happened there? Why is there such a terrible breakdown of protecting these children?
I'm not sure that there is a wholesale breakdown of protecting the children. All of the children that have come in and their mothers, that are found by the Border Patrol are detained, and they are put into the safety of one of these centers that's housing. Sometimes it's a hotel, sometimes it's vacant school or whatever. They're different places, and those are secured under the security of the Homeland Border, Customs and Border. Well, if you're talking about why were they allowed to come across?
So why were these people allowed to harass these children?
Well, you know, Governor Perry is the governor of the state of Texas, and so they probably couldn't prevent him.
Enough said, okay.
No, I'm just, there are, as far as I know, no reported instances of any of the unaccompanied minors or the mothers being harassed on the border while in the custody of the immigration, the Customs and Border Patrol. I'm sorry, they've had so many names. Yeah, absolutely. They're part of the Department of Homeland Security. And, you know, they've had different names, and I guess I'm so old that I sometimes flip back and get an old name. Excuse me, I'm going to go protect my
Hi.
I'll be back for the next question if anyone has one.
I have a question. Do we have any of these children here in the DFW area? And if so, what can we do to help those children?
I am glad you asked me that question, because the answer is yes. But what I would like to do, hold on, I've got some information. I would be, the Dallas Hispanic Bar Association has put out a very good brochure, newsletter. If you give me your email address, I can scan this and email it to you, and it gives you all the links so that you could know what you might be able to do that met your need, your interest, and your time. There's things that they are doing right now which would be very helpful if you happen to be bilingual, for example, because a lot of the children speak only Spanish. And so when they are interviewed, you have to have somebody that can speak their language and then communicate to somebody that may be their English-speaking attorney like me, the poor kid. But anyway, so there's that. Then there are people, if you don't have to be a lawyer, but if you want to be a part of the interview process, there's a way to do that. If you want to be a mentor, there's a way to do that. If you want to be what's called a mobile volunteer, which is there are certain underserved areas where there are not enough volunteers so that you would go there. There's also, public awareness and information. As you might imagine, there is so much false information on the internet, and you hear people who should know better say such things as, these children may have Ebola. Well, I know that Africa, and particularly 4 countries in Africa, have had a very difficult problem which is being addressed. Ebola has never been found outside of Africa. But that is just an example of the scare tactics that are being used against these children. So anyway, I could go on and tell you, there's local volunteer information opportunities. There are programs and training occurring next week, so if anyone is interested in getting the free training that they are doing so that you would know more about what would be involved if you decided to participate, that's also available. Okay.
That information is probably also on the Dallas County Democratic Party site. Katherine, I remember well Little Rock, but I want to address that largely so that you can comment about what I would consider the breakdown of cooperation between the legal entities that are involved, whether or not it has to be Homeland Security, Border Patrol, State Police, Dallas County Sheriffs, and the City of Dallas Police, whether or not there's any cooperation between them when there are organizations that obviously participating in the protests, particularly if you're riding around in 2 Greyhound buses, somebody's paying for it. And whether or not they're yelling about something about being illegal when they don't know what they're talking about generally. When in fact these are children that come over on the basis of that legislation that was passed in 2008, which Boner wants to repeal, and most of the Republicans, that allow for the children to come in, and then as you say, to be processed, that is judicially looked at, examined, and whether or not they're going to be allowed to stay and under what status, and whether they would be otherwise shipped back. Granted, they're underfunded, so the processing is very slow. But the comment I was looking for was, where's the cooperation between the legal entities that really should be responsible for it?
Well, now in Dallas County, we have very good cooperation going on between the City of Dallas Police Department, the Dallas County Sheriff's Department, the Dallas County Bar, most of the major law firms, the Dallas Hispanic Bar, and you also have a very significant push from the religious community and the faith community, and it's a very broad. It is ranging from smaller groups like Buddhist and to larger groups like the Muslim community, the Catholic community, the various Protestant communities, Methodist, Lutheran, Unitarian. I'm sure I'm leaving some out because it's an across-the-board commitment among the faith people, with the exception of Mr. Jeffers with First Baptist, who seems not to quite have the same view that many other of his colleagues in faith do. But I think in Dallas County we've got a pretty good setup, but you are talking about, to me, when I looked at the signs that were these people had, when I looked at how organized they had organizers, professional organizers, on every corner. I could see them, and they'd come and talk behind me, and periodically they would have that yellow snake flag they all love, behind me. But we're not talking about somebody that doesn't have a lot of money. We are talking about someone like the Koch brothers or one of their PAC groups that is funding this, because you look at I think that a lot of the people that I observed on Elm and Record were, first of all, being paid, secondly, not local, and thirdly, were not putting out their own money for being there. Should we have, another issue or continuing issue with immigrants, I think we'll see these people come up again. The Marietta group included some of the Minutemen sector, and some of the people. You remember that Clive? Was it Bundy, the ranch guy? He had some of the. There were some of the people from that area that had come to Marietta to, show the loyalty or whatever. So we can expect that that's the sort of situation we have if this should be on another occasion come up. But that's also going to be true anytime you are talking about the difference between the government that represents all of the people and government and that group within our society that don't want government except when it happens to suit them. Yeah.
Katherine. Thank you for being here and doing this.
Oh, well, it's fun. This is the best group in Dallas,
It is. You said something before about trying to know where this group is going to be, not knowing sometimes where they might be. So it sounds like we're not leading, we're actually following. So is there any way to get organizations together in a group to go down there and support these kids and what's happening right now, instead of being the follower, be the leader as a group, and go down and protest positively, and then let them do the catch-up? Because
Go ahead.
it sounds like they've got an organization leading. Let's do the same thing.
I don't have a short answer to that, but I can tell you that in reviewing and getting ready for this presentation, I learned that there are a lot of groups that are, on the border positive to the children and looking out for them. And I know that when we thought the children were coming here, there were a couple of groups that were trying to get organized to be along the road so that when the children came in, they would see positive welcoming signs.
Good.
So I think that there is a recognition that we cannot just sit still and react, but the other side of it is knowing whether or not that is, we're dealing again with little children that aren't particularly aware, and mothers, who aren't particularly aware of how America operates, and who are, based on what the bishop's report showed, they're not necessarily trusting of the police or the gangs. And so if you have a group of people outside where they are, saying positive things, they may only hear it as loud voices that they don't understand, but wonder why they're out there yelling. So, you have,
We have some, everybody probably has a Hispanic friend. They could translate for us on the signs. Get those words out.
Yeah, that's true. But, another part of this is that the literacy in that part of Central America is not high, so there's smileys I love.
Somebody was pointing back there.
Yeah, Katherine, I have deep sympathy for these children and so on. But I know that Obama met with the leaders of some of the countries of Central and South America where these children come from. The core problem starts in those countries. And of course America has, shall we say, a checkered past in dealing with these countries. What remedial measures should the United States take as a country on humanitarian grounds to prevent some of these, the causes of these children being in the situation they're in and being desperate enough to go through these dangers to get to this country? Do the political parties here, number one, recognize their complicity in what's gone on down there? The drug trade is really dependent on American demand as much as anything else. There's a saying in Mexico, poor Mexico, so far from God and so near to the United States. Well, so my question is there general recognition that the U.S., should introduce some measures to remediate this whole situation down there?
Based on what I have read, and the fact that the president was involved with this meeting, I would say that the State Department and the administration are certainly turning their attention toward those three countries. The reason that Mexico and I think it is Nicaragua, I've mentioned that as one of the three countries, but it wasn't. It was Guatemala, right? But you may remember 10, 15 years ago, you had significant problems with the drugs coming out of Nicaragua and out of Mexico. And because the United States put a lot of pressure and money into those two countries to bolster their abilities to actually have a government that approached governance. I can't say that I think that they're, totally where we would like them to be, but that's, it's much better than it was. But with respect to Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, I think that we are going to have what I would call the equivalent of the Marshall Plan, something really significant to give the people in those countries an opportunity for a life, and to give the people who are in charge of the government an opportunity and the strength to overcome the corruption and the gangs that are there, because if you are a governmental official in those areas and you cross the gangs, you yourself can be murdered, your children can be, your family can be, and that's that's not something that everybody can stand up and say, I'm going to fight this, because if you're fighting alone and you're the one killed, where are you? So I do think you have to have a very robust equivalent of a Marshall Plan down there. And I hope that will be, I'm sure the President will do what he can, given the dysfunction that we have with Congress. I think that there are some limitations that he has to face. And part of your question is, do I think that our representatives, our members of Congress, and when you say members of Congress, you're talking about both the House and the Senate, recognize these issues? I think some of the moderates, the old-timers, do. I think that there is unfortunately a rotten core, particularly in the House, who would rather bring this country down than do something that would be positive for this president. I hate to say it, but that's the way I see it.
Thank you. Katherine, I have the mic now, and I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to ask you a question. You said that there were people here. I had heard that Clay Jenkins said there were no of these young children coming or would be housed in Dallas County. Is this fact or fiction?
I think that there are two different things that we're dealing with. When Clay is talking about whether or not there'll be any of the unaccompanied minors housed in Dallas County, there won't be. I think that is absolutely correct, but once they have been processed, if they have somebody that will foster them, if they have a claim which is going to be heard.
I understand. You answered my question, because at first they were coming, they were looking at schools to put them in. He had a protest in front of his house on the Saturday that I was over at Brookhaven College and so forth, getting training for somebody I like. But no, you answered my question. That's what I wanted to know.
Okay. Rachel.
Give this to Rachel, please. No, we'll get Tom. Oh, I think I can do something. Come on, Tom. He just sits around looking pretty.
Well, he sits around anyway.
The best thing that I've heard tonight is a suggestion right over here into get some comforting words in Spanish. I don't see much hope with our current government and legislative people in solving these problems. There were 500 people at the ALEC protest, which I was very glad for. Actually, I did not. I was on vacation. I was not there. That's one I missed. However, I was glad to go down to the Commissioner's Court and testify in favor of bringing the children here. Call them what you want. They are children. And in this country, we protect our children. And the laws to protect our children are there. And when children come, we need to. I'm going to tell you another little story that's on the other side of the coin. Excuse me.
Why don't you do that with your help and her rather than this is question?
Yes. This is question time.
Okay.
Tom didn't want to tell you that because he doesn't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
Okay.
I'm very callous. No, when you get out there,
It's a grassroots effort. And that's what it's individuals stepping up, not groups, but individuals stepping up and making time to go down to make a difference.
I like what you said, Rachel, and I have a follow-on suggestion, although it's not it is a response to the question, what could Katherine suggest that we do? Katherine suggests that we consider buying, there are Spanish language greeting cards, and what would prevent us from doing, getting a Spanish language greeting card, being sure that it said something that we wanted to say versus, and mistakenly giving them a wedding gift or whatever. But just like P cards are sent to servicemen and an address somewhere, we could send cards to a child from Central America at the address, care of the Border Customs and Border Patrol in McAllen, or I'm sure we can come up with the address. And I think that was a good suggestion, a good question, and I'm happy to follow up with a suggestion.
I have a question.
You can kind of have an answer.
Okay. These countries, El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala are drug trafficking centers as well as human trafficking centers.
True.
So I think, I could be wrong, correct me, but the biggest drug that Americans are buying from south of the border is marijuana. Okay?
I think it's cocaine or heroin.
Well, that changes what I was going to say next. I was going to say we legalize marijuana, which a lot of states have already done recently. Then it takes away from their business. Then they don't have any, they don't have any business. So I'm not quite sure what we could do with cocaine, but there must be something we can do to just put the quietus on those bad guys.
Well, my thinking, and this probably goes back to the fact that I was a federal prosecutor, although I was only on the civil side, but my thinking is that the best thing that you can do with criminals is to catch them and put them away for a while, and that we should, thank you, Linda, and that what we should think about doing is stop putting people in jail for marijuana possession and that sort of stuff. And there are a lot of other things that people get really extended time for, which are relatively minor. So I certainly would like to see that changed, but I do think that that's probably a different subject than I was invited to talk about.
All right, we still need some more questions. We got one more question. All right, here we go.
Yes. Just wanted to get some clarification on your response earlier to the question as to the legality of the protesters in Mariana. And yeah, I wanted to get some further clarification to a question that was asked earlier as to the legality of all of the protesters in Mariana. And there were police in the background as well. Were they on state legal grounds, federal grounds, and the buses were all under federal auspices there? So I haven't been able to find any legal basis for that. And in my opinion, they were the same offshoot of people that happened out in Nevada, the ranch of Clive and Bundy, that same attitude. But in your opinion, was there any state, federal, or legal basis for them, and the police standing there watching them as well?
Okay, I think the police totally failed in their duty to protect the children. Those roads are public roads, whether they were U.S. highways or state highways, and they should have been made to be open. The police should have taken charge. They did not. I believe that The local police were influenced by the attitude of the mayor of Marietta, which was, we've got to stop this invasion, but the First Amendment right of protest does not trump all the other rights and authority under the United States Constitution. The federal government has authority under its police authority. It was transporting these children who are in its custody to a federal facility.
Thank you. Swallow it.
Looks like we're out of questions. Time for rebuttals. You get to sit down now and eat.
All right. Well, you all, thank you. It's always fun to come see you. I appreciate being invited.
Okay, now it's your turn to talk. So who wants to be first? No, she gets to eat. She gets to eat. Oh, he gets to rebut the rebuttal. Yes, yes. No. She gets to rebut the rebuttals. So who wants to be first here to rebut the speaker or anything you want to say? Well, if you want to be first. All right.
I heard a story that we'll take lightly. There were some kids who were asked what they were fleeing from in Honduras or Guatemala. He says, "Oh my goodness, there's just drugs and violence and murders." So later on, those kids were taken to the south side of Chicago. No, you don't have a sense of humor. Is everybody awake? I didn't tell it very well. All right, I could do better on my joke telling. Kids are trying to flee all this stuff, and where do they take them? They take them to the south side of Chicago, which is the baddest place in town, isn't it? It is. All right, we are going to take good care of these children. And for that matter, the adults that come with them. We are a good, compassionate people. The children who have come here in these last few weeks and months will have some of the best health care. They will have good treatment. They will have good food. They will have compassionate people. They will not be abused. They are going to be okay. But in the first place, we need to understand that there might be as many as 1/3 of the people coming over who are indeed children. In many cases, these are families. And a lot of them are teenagers, and those teenagers are already a little bit on the hardened side, probably been in gangs. They've already had drug context, and then how old do we know that they are? Do we actually, can we tell? Some of them might look 17 when they're 22. And there are parents coming with their kids, many parents. The media, which is good with this, they have shown us teddy bears, the Lego blocks, cute little toys. And that is so that we will be all softened up, that our heartstrings will be tugged at, that we will feel compassion, and it'll be the kids, it'll be the children, it'll be the children. Like I said one time before, whenever a politician gets up and starts crying, it's the children, it's the children. That's when we know it's not about the children. That's when we know. How do you know that? How do you solve that?
Let him talk.
Tell me, can you tell a Guatemalan from a Saudi Arabian? By looking? You think so? All right. I'm glad you can. Also, There is no scare tactic when we talk about the diseases that are coming in. Do we even know what the diseases are? Do we care about our own children? This begins to expose our own children to these added diseases. What about a safety net for our kids? Some of these foreign diseases have been completely eradicated from the United States. Are we going to take a chance on bringing them back? Now, we can deal with head lice, but there's more out there. Now, the 2008 law was only about the sex trafficking, and that was for a handful of people who might be coming in who were trying to escape. That was under George Bush. It was to be a few people. That is not the law. That is not the justification to have floods of illegals coming from Central America and maybe even South America. That is not the excuse for that. Guatemala has 12 million people. El Salvador and Honduras have 7 million. There is also Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama. Would you like for me to name some South American countries? They will come. How many million do we want here if we invite them? Do you understand, folks? They will come. How many do you want to write cards to? How many do you want in our city? Okay, 7 million? We'll put them in your backyard. Of course, things are bad in these other countries. They are terrible in these other countries. It's horrible. But are we going to bring that here? And if we do, that is just exactly what's going to happen. We need to understand.
15 minutes is over. 15 minutes. Time's up. Please. Enough is enough. 15 minutes.
Am I through?
Yes. If Tom would get up, he can't hear well.
Okay. We are not anti-immigration. All of us, listen. All of us should be anti-illegal immigration. If we are Americans, we will be against illegal immigration.
It's not illegal, right?
The quickest way to ruin this country is to have the dam burst and we have millions coming in here. Do you want to keep your country? You won't if you allow these millions to come in. I can't believe we're so naive, but they will. This is our country. I said this is our country. We decide who's coming in. They don't decide to come in because they want to. Because South America, Central America, and Mexico will flood into here and we will lose our country. Think, folks. Okay.
You're next.
Yes, I am. Do you know, I haven't had the chance to talk behind Ray in a long time. It's my favorite time. The point being is we have an immigration system that's busted. It's been busted for years. We have a Congress that the only thing it can say is no. We've had this law which Ray says was just for sex trafficking. I don't think it clarified it that much to say that. But it was a bipartisan when we had some bipartisanship in there. But as soon as we got a president that was a different color, a man of color, I told a lady a while back, I was at their house on a fish fry, and she asked me what I thought of Obama. I said, I think he's a brilliant president. And then I said, I do have one problem though. She said, what's that? And she was a black lady. I said, I know he's half white and I want my half. So anyway, we have a mean-spirited group of people, and I will name who they are. They're the Tea Party. I like to call them the me party. The me. I got mine, now you get yours. It's no chance of one of us helping another one. This is part of the compassion we hear. I might not go along with sending cards because perhaps I'm not that compassionate. But perhaps I am the type that knows what's right and what's wrong. I'm the type that gets out and puts my body on the line because I think I have to. And I think more people have to do it. I was at the ALEC protest, anti-ALEC. We got no coverage from the press whatsoever. I wonder why. Everybody said this is a liberal press, right? 6 of them, 6 of the entities, or the press is owned by 6 people. 6 different entities, and they are not liberal. I saw CNN today that, do you know where, should we be compassionate with these people in Iraq that are trapped on the mountain? Or should we just say the hell with them? You know, I don't feel that way about it. America is better than this. The country that I served in the military is better than this. And I myself are going to stand tall as I can and yell as loud as I can, as Katherine noticed the other day when she leaned over and said, "George, I'm having a silent protest." And I said, "Katherine, I'm on the wrong side of the street." But anyway, I think that as we look around and see what's been happening, we have people, which I will talk about in a couple weeks if Tom stops pushing me down the line there. I want to talk about what our enemies couldn't do to us, we have done to ourselves. And what we do is we have the evangelicals that quote the Old Testament, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. If you don't work, you don't get paid. What about the teachings of Jesus? You know, we had on our sign, which you didn't see, Katherine, because you were too busy holding your sign, and it was, "Who would Jesus deport?" And do you know who had it? It was myself, a Lutheran, an atheist, and a Jew. Sounds like a bad joke. Thank you. What?
National Public Radio.
Well, they had it, but that wasn't television when something was 500 people out there. That was not covered.
I think the Murdoch people were told don't cover it.
I'm sure it was.
Et cetera, et cetera. And I mean, there will not be another 99%er.
Okay, who's next? There's got to be a next. Who's next? Hey, no next? There's got to be a next. Come on up here.
I was told that we don't have a great deal more time. It's after 8 o'clock. And Katherine, I'm not arguing against what you said because I don't have no disagreement with what you said. And I don't really have a great deal to say after what he finished saying, what he had to say. But I just want to remind us, some people don't, do we all know the community in North Dallas, community that had a lot of issues with illegal immigration, getting housing. What happened there? The courts said they were wrong. So that's why we have a judicial system, because sometimes people get out of control, they listen to stuff that sounds good, and they don't think for themselves. And I think that's going to be the biggest problem we're going to have in the United States. We're going to use this because people don't think for themselves. They believe what other people said, and too many good people don't say nothing. And I really believe it's more of us than them. But if we don't say anything, we just hear the people on the fringe. You hear what they say and what they do. I don't think the 2008 law was just dealing with sex. It was dealing with more than that, because it was a compassion that the Bush family has, because the former governor of Florida was married to a Hispanic, and some people say Laura is mixed with Hispanic and white. So you have to look at those kinds of things. But I really think we ought to be about what's right. What's right. We didn't encourage, nobody in the United States encouraged those children to come over. But there are people who make money bringing them over, and they're encouraging them to come so that they would make their money. They aren't concerned about what happens to them when they get here, and they said, no, they're going to send you back. But what we are trying to get is enough money to hire these hearing officers so they can get their due process and we can make a decision. And some of them will be handled as refugees, and some will be handled as illegal. Those who are illegal will be sent back. And we all are conscious of the problem that they're facing as children and other people in those countries. Now, a lot of the murders that take place, who do they get the weapons from? Who do they buy these guns from? Us. They're buying from us. So this is a counterproductive thing. We're selling them weapons and buying their drugs. So it ought to be some kind of balance dealing with it. And so what I think we all need to begin to think by ourselves, and most of us, even atheists, they said an atheist they said the plane's going to crash and nobody's going to survive. And atheists say, oh God, help me. So they're not all atheists. They're just atheists as long as everything's going all right. But when it's going wrong, they kind of change their tone. But we need to think about what's right. And if we biblical, we got to look at both the Old Testament and the New Testament. We don't put those together. We might as well do is the traditional Jewish, they don't recognize the New Testament, and the Islams don't recognize the New Testament. But it's a kind of a new twist between the Old and the New Testament. So if we're going to bring the religious factor, we need to look at it from what it stands for. But I think we are compassionate people. We want these children to be handled the way we want our children to be handled. And there's so much stuff that's going on in the media that if you're not kind of reading about this stuff and thinking about it, things that sounds good may not be good. And I think, I don't think no country is going to defeat us. I think we're going to defeat ourselves because we don't think and we don't really understand. We forget about Article 6 in the Constitution. That's the supremacy clause, and it's not the states, it's the federal government. The federal government should not be arrogant. I think the federal government, the Homeland Security, is trying to do the best it can with the resources it has. But these children need to be treated with due process and equal protection of the law, and based on that process, the end of that process, then take the action that's necessary. Thank you.
He tells me I have 5 minutes, so there's a lot to say and a short time to say it. Give me the time, Susie. Okay, I have a question for Ray. Ray, when did your ancestors come to the United States?
I wish I knew.
You don't know?
They came from Ireland a long time ago.
Okay, well that was probably in the 1800s. That's when the big wave of Irish immigrants came to the United States. That's kind of late in the story of America's beginnings. My ancestors were here in the 1600s. Okay, 1600s from Scotland. And they didn't ask anyone's permission They didn't go to the British government for permission to come to America. They didn't go to an American government. There was no American government. They created the government. Okay, my folks were here and they fought the revolution. You know, the people that were fighting, they were called Tories. And those Tories, when they lost the Revolutionary War, they changed the name of that party. Guess what they're called today? Republicans. They're called Republicans, okay? And the Republicans today are very much like the Republicans back in the 1600s, okay? They want two kinds of people in the world, us and them. Us being the ones with all the power and control and money, and them that are the peons that don't deserve minimum wages, and they take all of the money away from everybody and put it in their own pocket. And that's exactly what Republicans are doing today. Okay, and I do not want, if I wanted to live in 16th century England, I would go back to England, okay? And I think all of the Republicans that want to turn this country into 16th century England should go back to where you came from. All right? Because you are against every single thing that has made this country what it is today, that has made this country successful, that has given this country the freedom and created the Statue of Liberty where bring me you're tired, you're poor, you're hungry. Okay? We opened our doors and we gave everybody an opportunity to come here. And we didn't screen them. We didn't do background checks on your ancestors. You know, we just said, you're here, you know, good luck, you know, and God bless you. So I believe that Republicans have given the United States a bad reputation all over the world. And it's embarrassing to me because every country in this world thinks, when they think of an American, is always having their hand out, taking their money, taking their land, taking their power. And that just makes me so angry, you know, that we've had so many Republican leaders that have given us this reputation and this image all around the world. And it's the reason why we have so many enemies. Well, I don't have much time. 1 minute. Okay. So these children are escaping death. It doesn't get any worse than that. They either are killed, as Katherine was saying, because they join a gang, or they're killed because they won't join the gang. Okay, they're dead either way by the time they rarely reach the age of 25 in these countries that we're talking about. Those children need our help. And when you said something about, can you tell them from an Arab, you know, there's more truth to that than what you realize, because 600 BC, folks, the people that came to this land of promise were from the Middle East. They were from Jerusalem. So the natives of Central America are primarily of Middle Eastern origin. That's why they do look so much alike. But Spanish people are Caucasian people. They are Europeans just like we are. They're not a different race, folks. They're part of the same family. We're all a part of the same family. We're all brothers and sisters here on earth. And I would say that, NRA, the guns, who brought up the guns? Okay, this is just another contradiction of Republicans' policies. You know, they want every Tom, Dick, and Harry that has $700 to have an assault weapon. And they will sell it to all of our enemies in the Middle East and South America and the drug cartels just for the money, 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 money. That's what they're all about. Okay, and then they turn around and say, well, we're not going to help those people. It's just silly. But it's a world that we're living in, and we have to deal with those problems.
Sure, come on up here. Just me and your leader?
Okay, a couple of words. Just in defense of England, I was there recently, and it didn't look like the 16th century to me. But anyway, I normally look at things, as people know, from the economic viewpoint. I tend to dislike all politicians. I do not think the Republicans are so terrible, and I don't think the Democrats are so good. Remember, it was Clinton. Actually, the NAFTA was started by George Bush Sr. and was signed by Clinton. In fact, it actually benefited Mexico and Central America quite well. However, in fact, the trade deficit with Mexico increased quite a bit during the 90s. Now, what ruined everything was Clinton pushed for the World Trade Organization to admit China. And it was the cheap Chinese imports that really has devastated the economy of Mexico and Central America. And actually, even China is now not cheap enough. They're going to Thailand and so on. So I think both parties are complicit in this devastation, economic devastation that's happened to Central America and also to the USA. So really, both parties are complicit in this wreckage that's happened.
Some people need to get through their minds that the Civil War is over with. The South lost the Civil War. It's over and done with. I mean, it's over and done with. All of this animosity and hatred toward the federal government need to end. So many people who are against that, yet they have no problem taking all of these benefits and stuff from Social Security and other things out there from the Fed, yet they hate them so much. And with this situation on the border, how would we want somebody to treat us? If we were in a desperate situation running for our lives, if we weren't born in the family that we were born to in the country that we're in now, if you were there, if the situation was just changed and reversed, how would you want somebody to treat you? And you know you were not a criminal, you were in a catch-22 situation. You know, your life was at stake. Now, I would like to see something done to try and change the culture and the situation in the countries that many of them are fleeing from, so as to make it more civil and productive and things like that. And perhaps there's more going on than what I'm aware of. But we can't, on one hand, talk about, illegal immigrants coming in the country being lawless, then stand out and act 10 times much more lawless than they were, by blocking buses with women and children, desperate women and children there, buses that were under the auspices of the federal government. And I think many of those people were taking a lesson from this welfare cowboy out in Nevada, Cliven Bundy. They look at how he stood down the government with people of your mindset pointing rifles at federal agents, Land Bureau, this welfare cowboy who hadn't paid his grazing fees in over 20 years, where many other cowboys paid their grazing fees, ranchers paid their fees. He's the only one that hadn't. Two of the people who followed him, members of the Sovereign Citizen, walked into the restaurant in Nevada. Two police officers sitting there executed him in the back of the head, put the Tea Party flag down on the bodies. The flag that they placed on the bodies of those police officers were Tea Party flag. I haven't heard Fox News or any of your Ted Cruz or anybody come out, Sarah Palin or anybody stand up and deny and cry out against that. So the biggest group of lawless people in the country, in my opinion, are those who are standing out there with the Tim McVeigh and Terry Nichols and Eric Rudolph mindset, and the mindset of people who are flying planes in the IRS offices because they hate the federal government. Those are the most lawless people in the country, and in my opinion, your Aryan Brotherhood and the rest of them are 10 times more fearful and dangerous to the country than any Al-Qaeda or any ISIS. And if I had a choice, I would much rather have illegal immigrants come in the country and replace them. The Civil War is over with. It is over with. I mean, if you're going to complain about lawlessness, make sure that you're obeying the laws as well. Don't talk about frivolous lawsuits, then you turn around and file one. That's 10 times, that's the epitome of frivolous lawsuit, wasting taxpayers' money. But you know, in one sense, I thank God for the Tea Party, because they have caused Republicans a number of seats in the Senate. If it weren't for them, they would probably be controlling the Senate now. So I think what we heard earlier, the fear-mongering and hate-mongering that you hear from there should rally decent, civilized people to get out and vote to keep that mindset from taking over both houses this fall. Thank you.
Okay, who wants to be next? There has to be a next.
What time are you going to shut it down, Tom?
Well, we had to be at her by 9, so, you know. Well, we'll do that too. There'll be time. We'll give you time. Let me see if there's any more here. Anybody else got something to say? I guess we're running out of people. I'm the last one standing. So.
Hold on. Some girl wants to say something. You want to hear what he would say? Okay.
Come on, Tom, help her out.
Help her out. Well, no, we're just up here talking. You want to say something?
No, but this is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Have a seat, sweetie.
Have a seat. Let her sit down there. Is it on?
Who are you?
I'm Eliza.
Hi, Laza.
Hello.
And how old are you?
6.
I bet you're going to start school again soon.
Are you going to talk to us about immigration?
I don't know what that is.
You don't know what that is. Thank you. You're very beautiful.
Thank you.
At least you stayed with the subject.
That's a good one. I guess I'm the last man standing. No one else has anything to say. Anyway, I want to thank our speaker for being here tonight. I think she did a terrific job. One of the reasons we've touched on immigration, the problem we have, I think that part of our problem is that our country is a little bit on the decline because of what even you spoke of as far as the economics. We're in deep trouble because we've set our industries overseas, and we've taken we put in NAFTA, but then in the next breath we put in China, and that's one of our problems we'll have to address. But that's probably the overriding problem of all of it. But I applaud for what you've done tonight. I think that you're on the right track, and we have to proceed. We have to go along those lines. Anyway, that's about all I have to say. And we got our speaker give the last word. So come on up here.
Another thing that makes this such a terrific group is that you do get the last word. Now, I wanted to touch on something that was a couple of people raised, and that is, what are the undocumented children or adults getting? And so I happen to have a quick answer. What kind of services are provided by the federal government? Even though the children stays in the HHS fund, it's Health and Human Services, not the Department of Homeland Security, that cares for these children, and that's under the 2008 amendments. But the HHS funded facilities are brief, but they are full of services. HHS pays for translators, food, shelter, basic medicine, counseling, and more. Now, the more will include checking to see if any adult or child, has any disease that is communicable, and also giving them the vaccinations that are required in the United States. So all of this talk that you hear about from, that these kids have got disease, or I guess they don't think the grown-ups are diseased, but anyway, it's just not true. It is, you probably can look back to when you were reading about Ellis Island and the immigrants who came into the United States through Ellis Island. As you probably know, everyone was checked, and if they were sick, they didn't come in. If any of these children or adults have a communicable disease, they are treated, they are vaccinated, they are not spreading any kind of mysterious disease that isn't available here. Now, they're probably more at risk from what people are not doing here in terms of taking their immunizations, because you have, for reasons which for the life of me I don't understand, you have people able to opt out of giving their children the immunizations for measles, mumps, and chickenpox. I don't know how any parent could deny their child, unless the child falls within that small sliver that is actually allergic, or to that. Why would you risk having your child get measles? And yet you probably read that measles is a disease that is coming back, that actually people in Texas have measles. So when there are outbreaks of disease, rest assured that it's not coming from these unaccompanied minors or their women that are coming in. There's a lot that was raised, and in terms of the rebuttal, a lot of you all responded as I would have, so I won't go it twice. I do appreciate having the opportunity to speak with you all. I appreciate having the opportunity to listen to other views, and I thank you very much.
Thank you. Katherine, he speaks Spanish if you want.
Okay, that's about it for tonight, but we will retire to the Starbucks down at the corner. You're all welcome, including our speaker. And we're going to go to Starbucks down in the corner from here, and you're welcome to come and converse, whatever you want to do. And you may, if our speaker comes, you'll get a chance to ask her questions personally and so on. Anyway, thank you very much for being here, and see you next week.
This is William, your videographer from Two Hats Publishing. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like it, please leave comments below, or like us, or follow us, and get notices